what is alive in every heart is this great longing, right? What is alive in every heart? And it doesn't matter what language we give to this longing of the heart. But in this moment, it's coming forward as this recognition that what every being, every heart is longing for is authenticity. This is the word that's coming forward, this longing to live authentically, to be absolutely authentic and real and true in the lived expression all the way through, so that there's a complete sense of alignment in the life, and that carries forward to authentic relating, authentic living, just living at the absolute depth of the truth of the being that we are. And we can use all kinds of language, and we can take that one truth and we can diversify it into so many different ways of expressing it, and teachings and lineages and histories and wisdom sharings. But ultimately, it feels so true that what is so important is that we come to the truth of our own heart, and we come to recognize in our own heart what we are longing for. And when we recognize what we are longing for, it can have this immediate effect of just focusing our life in a way that says, okay, this is what I'm longing for. And if I focus upon what I'm truly longing for, then anything that moves in this life, anything that comes into this life, will be aligned with that one great longing. Because we can fragment so easily in life, and we can fragment by means of the mind and have these ideas that what I'm trying to achieve is this, what I'm trying to connect with is this, what I'm trying to make work is this. And actually, if those ideas are mental and they're not rooted in the deepest longing of the heart, then in a way we're wasting so much energy trying to be something that we're not. Whereas when we are actually fully focused and aligned, and all that we are is focused upon what we're truly longing for, then we come alive and we're resourced from the source. We're resourced from the depths of our true longing, that we're saying yes to the recognition in the heart. Okay, this is what is longed for. This is what is alive here. And the more that we distill that recognition in our own heart, it allows not for us to be choosing and making decisions that are aligned with that. It's something so much more profound. It's that when we're saying yes, we're resonating at a frequency, and it's the frequency field that is the sponsoring seed of the creation of the appearance of our life, that brings the revelation of a life that is either reality, heaven on earth, or it is a karmic play that's playing out. And we're absolutely resourced within our functioning to shift our allegiance to the deepest longing of the heart, so that we're living at the frequency of openness, of love, absolutely resourced in the field of light, so that the heart is illuminated and we're resonating at this frequency that is creating what we're actually longing for. And we come to realize that in a way, all of the threads of our longing, they can be dispersed through the mental functioning and through the desire mechanism, and they can be dispersed in a way that seem disparate. But when we recognize that everything that actually we're longing for, everything we could even say that we want, everything even that we desire, when we recognize that it's rooted in one singular longing, And that is this longing to know the true nature, a longing for authenticity, a longing to be authentic in our own sense of being, and to be authentic in the lived experience of life, to feel an authenticity, a realness, a trueness, right? An honesty. You see, it doesn't really matter what words we use. And the great revelation is that as we really open to this truth, we start to be able to play and dance with words, because we start to feel the resonance of the words, like not the mental meaning or the interpretive expression of the words, but we start to feel that resonance aligned. And we recognize that there are certain words that carry a resonance in our own heart that bring us alive, that bring us into a sense of a deeper recognition. And it's this that we're longing for. We're longing to live this life in the best way that we can. We're longing to feel joyous and happy. We're longing to feel awe and wonder and delight, truth. We're longing for our way of living and expressing. And so too, then our working, we're longing for that to be a dharmic flow that feels absolutely aligned and creative and inspired and from source. And we're longing for our relationships and our relating to be aligned with that too. We're longing for this. And sometimes we can be in a sense of feeling disconnected from the power and ability to know that we have the capacity to create that. Sometimes we can feel disconnected from that power. And therefore, we would be giving power to the mind and the play and feeling disempowered. But the glorious revelation of the heart is that we never need to actually be feeling disempowered or disconnected, because we have the power to be connected and to be living at the frequency, resonance that is powerful and that has the power to create what we are longing for. And let's say here, in alignment with the glory and the will of God, we could say, or the divine will, that we find that what we're actually truly longing for, we can be trying to find our way, trying to work it out. But ultimately, when we align with divine will, we actually come into a sense of alignment where it's not what the mind imagines. The mind could imagine, well, it's all very well that there's a divine will, but maybe that's not what I want, right? Maybe I want something different. So we can be in this sense of discord with divine will. But what we come to discover is that divine will is actually us knowing our true nature and being so aligned with our own heart that we feel in that alignment an inner yes and an inner balance and harmony and harmonizing, because we're starting then to live this authenticity absolutely aligned with our unique wiring, that we're wired. We could say designed. We could say we have a unique configuration of laws of nature, but that we're uniquely configured to live a particular life expression. And all of our longing is to feel that we're absolutely aligned with that. And so that we're then resourced from the source and we're living our essence nature. And everything that we're longing for and all the words that we can give to that, wholeness, integrity, authenticity, realness, fullness, truth. In a way, it's what true spirituality is. right? If we bring spirituality back to its own essence nature, away from the discordant corruption of the worldly multitude of interpretations of spirituality that are actually not aligned with reality, when we bring spirituality in the heart back to reality, we discover that spirit and true spiritual essence nature is very simple, and that it's got nothing to do with the worldly interpretations that have created so many businesses and so many discordant, corrupt ideas about what it is to be spiritual. So just in this time of Kali Yuga, it's a time of great distortion in the field, in the collective consciousness. And so that's why, even though we're longing for this truth, that if we're playing along in the worldly and even within worldly interpretations of spirituality, we can still feel so discordant and disappointed and disconnected. Because ultimately, if we're giving power to anything outside of our own deep knowing, we will feel fragmented and dispersed. We won't feel aligned with the glory of our true revelatory knowing. And only when we're aligned with the true revelatory knowing do we feel our own true nature, our own wide open heart, and the sense of what we are as being light, as being love, being a frequency that is resonating in accord with itself, loving itself, aligned with itself. That if we're feeling like we have to get permission from something external, or if we're feeling like we're living by someone else's interpretive principles, we'll never feel the true power and glory of being aligned with God within our own heart, right? If we're trying to look for permission externally. And yes, there are so many ways that are glorious, where we can be guided and companioned, and we are aligned with the frequency of love, of truth. And we know too in our heart where we're aligned with that, because we feel it rippling through our whole lived experience. We don't feel discordant. We don't feel disconnected. It feels smooth. It feels simple. It feels beautiful, right? But ultimately, everything that comes in to guide and companion us and support us is guiding us into our own heart, into the remembrance of the integral frequency of the wholeness that comes when we are aligned and docked in the heart of the divine. And now we can call that divine God, or the mother, or truth, or wholeness, the Christ. We can use whatever words we want to use, but it doesn't actually matter, because that is nameless. That is unfathomable, nameless. But in a way, what we're opening to is to come to a resonance within our own heart's knowing, where we do recognize it, where we feel alive in that. And yes, as we come alive in our knowing of that, there is a process of purification and refinement that is happening, which is the living of life. Life is what's purifying us. Life is what is refining us. And we see that the integral experience of a life being lived in the human experience is the process, the natural process of self-realization, right? Every being is a candidate for self-realization. Every being is a candidate to shine as a resonance of light, of heart, of being. Every being that is in a human experience is a candidate for this truth. Of course, it's all inclusive, it's all encompassing. And yet where we are in that unfolding is that we are one field, one whole field. And yet in our unique lived experience, we are in different parts of the process. So there's no hierarchy in truth. There's no hierarchy in light. And yet in our lived experience, there are differences. There can be more light available, more light availability. Our capacity refines and grows as we open and we open. And we can be, let's say, lived by the light, lived as an instrument of service, lived at that frequency. And really, we're opening not to a personal experience. We're living in a surrender of the sense of personal into the direct revelation of the heart that this mystical life, this mystical revelation is actually an impersonal revelation. And yet the glory of it is that when we release the personal into the impersonal, we actually come into an intimacy that is so close, so breathy, so intimate, and closer than we could ever imagine. That we're so in love with what we are, so in love with love, as love, and that's the inner refinement that's happening. So in that, we realize that we're never looking to refine by making compromises in the external. We can never find love in the external, and that the whole lived experience is about making our inner environment entirely loving. That this, the sense here is, this is what true authenticity is that our internal environment is entirely loving and entirely wholesome. And that's why, if we're attempting to get approval, validation, affirmation, confirmation, love from the external, that it will always feel disappointing if our inner environment isn't that, right? If our inner environment isn't that, our inner environment is the sponsoring frequency for the lived experience. So all of the work that happens in this lived experience is about refining our inner atmosphere. And now the thing that can be tricky in this is that we can feel like, well, I'm doing everything to make my inner atmosphere loving. And yet our inner atmosphere is also entangled with unconscious patternings. And the thing about unconscious patterning that's tricky is that we don't know it's there. We don't know where there can be sponsoring frequencies that are not aligned with what we're really longing for. Or we could say they are aligned, but they're patterned in discordance and they're patterned in protection. But what we know is that life is always attempting to bring us the most refined and purifying possibility that we can live this truth all the way through. And so when life is playing to bring the unconscious forward, it will feel uncomfortable. And yet it is love's attempt to bring an even more authentic inner atmosphere, an even more loving inner atmosphere. And so that's why what we speak of as part of this growing into our own deeper, radiant authenticity is our ability to be so loving without the truth of our experience. And to be so loving with the truth of our experience is to be so intimate with our lived experience that we're not denying any part of it, that we're not pushing down, we're not trying to be, we're not I should be, or I have to be, or this would be the better presentation here. It's a truth within our lived inner experience that allows whatever we're feeling and whatever is true for us to be welcomed in our inner atmosphere. That we're not trying to create a facade, that we're not trying to create any kind of convoluted or even compromised inner atmosphere, that we're opening so that our inner atmosphere can be as loving and as free as we have the capacity for. And that in truth, our refinement is about refining our inner atmosphere. Because as we refine our inner atmosphere, so the appearance of the creation of life starts to shift and change. And yes, there can be these unconscious patterns that we have ways of behaving and moving that we're not conscious of, that are protective and conditioned. And yet life is always offering us this possibility to illuminate and see more clearly. In order to illuminate, we have to know the light that we are. We have to know the technology, right? We have to know where is the technology of illumination in our lived experience, so that we realize that we have the power and capacity to illuminate, that we're fully equipped, that we have the technology. And the technology of light is actually incredibly simple. It illuminates what seems to be shadow and reveals that it's actually light, right? It's a very simple technology. And in the light, we get to illuminate from a place that is non-judgmental, without opinion, and totally open and loving. We get to illuminate the parts of our inner experience where we are self-judging, self-hating, opinionated and opinioning, where we're in an inner atmosphere of limiting ourselves and putting upon ourselves conditions, ideas and concepts and beliefs that we've taken on, inherited, we've learned, and that are also unconscious. They're also multi-lifetime, they're also pre-verbal, and they're just patterns that are part of the karmic system, the play of cause and effect. And that ultimately, in a way, all that is really needed is that we come to the remembrance of the light that we are. So we're resourced from the source. We're resourced from the light. We're resourced from the light, the true light. We're resourced, and we realize that we're equipped with the simple technology of illumination. And that the technology of illumination allows us to shine the light and to see in the brightness of that which is never touched or changed or moved, disturbed by anything, the unwavering light of awareness, the unwavering light of the being, of the heart, of our own inner knowing, that we have this capacity to illuminate whatever in our inner atmosphere feels discordant, and to actually not try to fix and change it, not try to make it different, but to meet it with so much presence, such a depth of presence that says, you are welcome. It's unspoken. We're giving words to it here. It's unspoken, and it says, you are welcome. You are loved. You are blessed. You are part of me. I see you. I don't try to push you away. And I recognize right now in this moment, You're feeling unhappy. You're feeling discordant. You're feeling stressed. You're feeling angry. You're feeling this. I recognize that you're feeling that. And I don't try to stop you feeling that. I'm just seeing you from a place that doesn't feel that. And so it's like a communication in your inner atmosphere, in your innermost being that recognizes, okay, this is what is here. Can I illuminate and be present for this without trying to get away from it, without making it wrong, right? To not make it wrong is such a fundamental technology that we're so not used to employing, because we're so used to making it wrong, because somehow, often in our young life, even our explosions of emotional expression were made wrong. So we learned not to trust our own emotional expression, and we learned not to trust how we feel, and we learned to try to manipulate our behaviors and our functioning to try to fit in to a family system or a tribal system, that we were like a tribal consciousness where we try and find our place, and we try to make allegiance. Of course, it was a survival mechanism, and it could have been a beautiful tribe, right? It doesn't mean that it wasn't a loving family that we were born into. Of course, we were loved, and every parent and guardian has been doing their best. But when we start to see the bigger picture, we realize that unless we were actually born into a completely enlightened environment. Hands up who that was true for. Yeah, right, there we go. So unless we're born into a completely enlightened environment, we will have taken on, and that's part of the divine plan, right? It's okay. There's nothing wrong. But so too, part of the divine plan is that in this lifetime, great glory, we are wired to be the change of that. We're wired for something different. We're wired, whatever age we are in our human life, in human years, whatever part of our life we are at, we're wired to be the change. We're wired for the light to go on in this lifetime, the light of revelation. We're wired to know our divinity. Now, all the companions and ancestors that have come before us have also been wired for this. But the thickness and the density of the fog was just so much heavier. Although, of course, there have been pioneering beings. And of course, there's been, to whatever capacity is available, the kind of searching and the seeking, right? But we are wired in this time, and the collective consciousness is at a frequency where we have the possibility to really open to the light of consciousness and start to illuminate the lived experience, start to illuminate the patterns of consciousness in our own lived experience that are discordant. And it's not about saving the world or changing the world. It's about recognizing that world is a projection of our inner environment, and whether we're aligned with our heart or whether we're aligned with the mind. And as we start to realize, wow, we actually do have the power to be the change. We actually do have the power to be the light, and not just to shift the lived experience of our own unique sense of the human life, the part that feels personal, the part that feels individual and unique. Not only do we have the power to shift that, but actually our shifting of that is the most profound frequency impact upon the whole that is possible. It's the greatest service in this human life, is to be the living change through our lived experience and through living an integrated life, an embodied life, a true life, an authentic life, right? There it is, that authenticity that we're speaking of, that actually we're here to truly shine in our authenticity. We're not here to keep it in the tall grass and play it small. We're here to shine. And to shine can actually be asking us to step out of the comfort of certain tribal consciousness that we've made affiliation with unconsciously, that we've made unconscious commitments and affiliations with certain kind of tribal consciousness and groups and ideas where we've made a commitment to stay small and not shine. And great glory, hallelujah, we're recognizing, wow, if we can actually see in our inner atmosphere where we've made these unconscious commitments, we can actually start to illuminate them by our own power. We can heal by our own power. And we can start to shine more brightly. And that brightness starts to be the frequency that creates the appearance of life. It's in service to the whole, so it's part of the great shift that humanity is longing for, yearning for, that we don't actually have to shout from the rooftops, although our Dharma might ask us to do so. But we don't actually have to. We can be equally a secret agent of change, a secret agent of illumination, right? By living this frequency, our vibration resonance of the lived experience of life is the offering that we are making to the whole, into the collective, that we are one field of light. And the more that we come to recognize that we are one field of light, and we're in this together, we're in this adventure together. Yes, we're living a unique expression, a unique experience, but we're one field of light that is absolutely in brilliant support of itself the whole time. And part of that is we have this shared experience where we know that we're one in and as light, and that we are one in and as love, as one wide open heart, one presence of being, one glory. And yet our lived experience, the ways that it feels personal, the ways that it feels unique, the ways that it feels individual, we can know in our deepest sense that the truth is that there's one wholeness and that we belong to that. But in our flow of refinement and recalibration and coming to really live this, we're refining our sense from, let's say, where the personal, unique individual feels divided or limited, to realize that our life in truth is not divided from wholeness. It's not divided from the glory. It's not divided from the light that is whole and brilliant. And that as we start to open within our lived experience to the inner atmosphere where we recognize that the light is on, that the light has always been on, right? Sometimes we say, how far have you traveled from home? Right, beloved, intrepid traveler, how far have you journeyed away from your own heart? But that you come to realize that the light has always been on. Right? Oh, that stirs tenderness in the field, right? How beautiful. How beautiful. That we realize that we've never journeyed too far away, that the light has gone out. It's impossible. That even if in moments we feel that a sense of disconnection, it's never possible that the light, the spark of God, the glory is shining in your heart as this truth always. And so the invitation is this invitation to turn to the light within, right? That light is not outside of you. No one can give it to you. And the glorious thing is, no matter how much they're trying to sell it for, and however much you might think, wow, that must really be it because it's got a really massive price tag, that's not it, right? However far you feel like you have to journey, right? Whatever kind of big trip you think you might need to make in order to meet the one or to gather it, whatever you think that you need to put yourself through, none of it is the truth. It's all conceptual. The truth is, it's about turning to yourself in the simple silence and presence of being and opening to the spark of revelation that the light is on inside your own heart. And that when the recognition of this opens, it's then about tending the light of your own heart, tending your inner revelation so that it grows and starts to radiate and resonate at the frequency of remembrance, right? That the biggest journey that we actually make in this unfolding is from now to now, right? That we truly land in this moment with such an intense focus of presence and such a wild longing of the heart that says, okay, I'm ready, great glory, to come home to you. I'm ready, great glory, to come home to myself. Thank you, great glorious light of all that is. Thank you, glorious presence of God. Thank you, divine mother of softness and radiance and light. Thank you, revelatory, mystical truth. Thank you, radiant light that is so bright and brilliant. Thank you, wholeness that is never divided, fragmented. Thank you, unfathomable, unnameable one. Thank you, love, so pure and spotless, perfect and unconditional. Thank you, whoever you are, whatever you are, my great, glorious, higher, undivided self. Thank you in this glorious moment for reminding me and bringing me a sip of the nectarine remembrance of home. Yummy, right? Just take in the yum of your own heart. Yum, right? Let it resound, the unstruck sound, right? Just that inner revelation, the inner knowing. Mm. And that once we are in connection with this remembrance, instead of then giving fuel to the mind that says, okay, I'm here now, but what about when I forget? What about when the mind comes in? What about? It's like, hush, 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 right? Hush, child of the mind, right? We hush the child of the mind, not by pushing it away. It's not a hush that says push away. It's a hush that's such an embrace, such a holding. It's not a hush that says, hush, go to your room, shut the door, and stop feeling like that. It's a hush, little baby, right? I've got you. It's a hush, I'm holding you. I get that you feel concerned that you're going to lose this remembrance. I get that you feel fearful that you could lose this connection, the sense of remembrance. I get that, but just hush, hush, and just drop into the presence of love that's here now and feel held. Feel the all-encompassing love of love itself. Feel the all-encompassing love of the mother, the great parent, the mother-father unified one that has never left, Feel the love that is perfect and divine, that has never left. Hush and feel the belonging so that you can feel it so deeply in your remembrance that you remember that you have never been divided, that you have never forgotten, and so you could never forget or divide. Let the remembrance of your heart just dock and come alive so that you sip the sweet nectar of the bliss of remembrance deeply enough that you remember that this nectar is always here and that your invitation is just to keep sipping like a hummingbird on the sweetness of your remembrance, right? That you just continue to sip the sweetness, the sukha of your remembrance. And that maybe in a flash, the picture of life doesn't quite change because it can take the body longer to catch up, right? But as we keep sipping the sweetness, know that the frequency from which you are creating the appearance of your life is shifted to being a creative frequency that is whole and inspired and bright, right? We could also say that it's not of time, and yet it's also the future, right? When this one comes into expression, it's like unfathomable to the mind. How could this moment be the future? But we could also say, but how could heaven be on earth? Because when you drop the concept that heaven is away from yourself, you realize that in this moment, that dying into heaven is in a way dying out of the misunderstanding of separation and entering the heaven of the wide open heart and entering the revelation that all mystics have ever opened to, which is the timeless presence of now, of the love, of the glory, of the brilliant light that is always shining as the one heart. And that we open to this here now. And we don't have to worry about a sense of future. It's like we just tend the inner environment. And in a way, we could say, then if our tending cannot divide, if our tending can be a recognition of this inner flame, this inner light, if our tending can be to remain unified, whatever happens in the play, and how we remain unified, whatever happens in the play, is to stay open, to say, okay, whatever's happening here, I don't divide, I don't go into fear and division, and I don't go into a sense of I've done something wrong or something is wrong here. That instead I say, okay, here's something unconscious that's surfacing. Here's something that feels really hard. Here are my feelings that feel really stressful and discordant right now. But I stay present in an undivided way for the fullness of my own lived experience, right? I stay open to the fullness of my own lived experience. And instead of saying no to what's happening, I say, okay, this is what's here. And yes, there's a part of me that doesn't like it. There's a part of me that's feeling stress or fear or disappointment or hurt or even despair, whatever it is. But can I welcome that part of me so that the inner functioning is this continuing to bring an integrity of the integrity of love to your inner atmosphere, where you're not dividing or making any part of yourself wrong. right? So this is what we are speaking of. This is what we are opening to. And this is what we are being invited into by the great glorious light of all that is ever here as one field, ever glorious, ever shining. And so part of this revelation is the recognition through the spark of our knowing that the wholeness of this field is already here. And even if our lived experience feels to be just a spark, that spark is connected to the glory. And if it feels like a fire, that fire is connected to the glory. That however we sense that, and whether we sense it as a deep inner silence, or whether we sense it as peace, or whether we sense it as an inner knowing and a wild aliveness, like a dynamism, a dynamic knowing, however we sense that we're true to that knowing, and that we have our unique way then of tending and opening and remembering. And even if there is a sense that we forget, where we feel disconnected, that we know we can come back in, and that the light is always on, and it's just about turning to it and being one in it. So in a way, this authenticity that we are longing for, it's about following the joy in our heart, right? You know, I think it was Joseph Campbell who so brilliantly said, you know, follow the bliss and it will open doors to things that you cannot imagine. Now that's absolutely my paraphrase because I never remember the exact words, but this is what we're speaking of in our own way here. We're speaking of following the joy, following that inner revelation, following what brings you alive, what brings a sense of joy and happiness, right? And to stay true to that brings us to a recognition of where our authenticity is, where our realness is, where truth is. And that we may not see the blossoming and fruiting of it in the fullness, in the ways that we'd like to quite yet. But that if we keep nurturing it and letting the joy be the compass, let's say, that the inner knowing be the compass that we follow, that we're following a sense of our inner atmosphere being aligned with this truth and being constantly in the revelatory experience of now, of wow, of the awe and wonder that is the mystical revelation. And you know, the mystical revelation is not in time. The mystical revelation is timeless. And so the mystical revelation is ever fresh. It's now. It's wow, right? It's the delight of what the heart knows. It's the delight of what the heart longs for. It's the delight of feeling truly inspired, of recognizing when there's creative intelligence flowing. It's that moment of realizing, wow, this is just happening. This is just happening. This isn't my doing. I couldn't make it this beautiful with my mind, right? I couldn't bring even the imagining of this. But you feel into a sense of that revelatory field where inspiration is flowing and love is the reality. And even if it feels like I slip into that flow, but I'm not always in it, it's knowing that the possibility of being in that flow is always here because that flow is always flowing. And it's about aligning with that flow, putting your toe, your foot, your ankles up to your knees into the river, being fully immersed, absorbed, soaking, being carried, right? Letting yourself be carried. So yes, it is about stepping in a way into the unknown, but it's not a doing, like, okay, I'm ready, I'll step into the unknown. It's a stepping into the unknown which enters it, and in the revelation of it says, oh yes, this feels good. This feels authentic. This feels true. Yes, this. Yes to resting here. Yes to this, right? It says, yes, I'll sip the sweetness of this moment, and I'll let the sweetness of this moment carry me into this moment and the sweetness of this moment. And I'll sip on the sweetness of this moment. And then I'll be in the revelation of, oh, this moment, right? This ever-present sipping of the sweet nectar of your own inner revelation. And that in a way, this whole unfolding, it's not about cultivating an atmosphere through mental toil and perseverance and efforting. It's about allowing your inner atmosphere to be like an inner cultivation. It's more like a ferment, right? It's like just soaking in it and sipping the nectar, being fed by your inner atmosphere, and like fermenting in your inner atmosphere until you start to create something that is so healthy and so deeply nourished within itself, right? That you start populating your own inner atmosphere with more love. You start populating your own inner atmosphere with the brilliance and the radiance of the light that is. That it's not about bringing in the external. It's about being in the inner revelation. And the glory is that we also get to be in that inner revelation, not in a way that feels alone or lonely, although there is part of the initiation where there is a sense of being in the aloneness of that, because in a way, it's the recognition that the aloneness is not actually a loneliness. It's the initiation of the aloneness of being alone with God, being alone with the Divine Mother, being alone with your innermost profound illumined self. There is a part of the initiation that is about that. But the glory is that simultaneously we have this shared field where we come together in revelation and celebration to feed and nourish what we are absorbed in, what we are fermenting, right? The fertile ground that we're fermenting in. We get to be in the companionship because we realize that we're creating this companionship out of the inner frequency of our longing. And so we get to be in the companionship and the sharing and the revelation together, where we can celebrate and share everything that's present in the field. And we can share the revelation and the celebration and the glory of what we're noticing. And we can share where we feel like we're stuck or challenged, right? That there's this revelation that is about joining in the one wide open field of light and illumination, and this field of love. And here we're not really asking for anything. And yet we can be open in communication with the divine. We can be open to say, show me, what can I not see? Bring forward what is needed. We can be in this communication. And at the same time, we know that this is a field of love and flow, and that the field of love and flow is a field of the miraculous, where life is creating itself out of itself. It's creating itself out of its most fine frequency, right? So we're here and we're in a sense of, well, I just don't know. I can feel the sense of what is longed for. I can feel a sense of inspiration and creativity. And what if we just sit in this field, immersed, absorbed, and fermenting in a sense of, I can feel it. I can feel that creativity, but I don't need to force it or push it. I just need to ferment here. And I know that the impulse comes, right? The impulse comes. It just happens. And if I sit and ferment, right? And I allow that creative inspiration to come. Even if I have to engage and play with whatever are my toys of inspiration, however that is, whether it's about writing or drawing or painting or weaving or knitting or whatever it is, or gardening or whatever it is, right? Singing and dancing or walking, whatever that inspiration is. It's about just sitting in the frequency until you feel inspired, right? You feel that movement. You feel that authentic flow start to come alive. And there's a part of you that's just witnessing as it's happening. So when we speak about authenticity, it's really coming alive in our own light. It's really about our inner atmosphere being so finely at the frequency of love and loving, and that it's about loving yourself, being with yourself in love, whatever's happening. And just starting then to watch as the created appearance of life starts to shift, when the seed that is being propagated and nourished for growth is your inner knowing of the love that you are and the light that you are. And you know that the whole emergence is about the quality of your inner environment. And the quality of your inner environment is about the frequency, vibration, resonance of your innermost knowing of the being that you are. And being the radiant light that shines on the surface of life, that brings the light to the surface of life uniquely and shines upon your inner atmosphere in service to yourself and your inner revelation and evolution, and knowing that that inner revelation and evolution is in service to the whole. So what a great, glorious mission, right? What a great, glorious mission that we have. That our mission is to shine. That our mission is to shine.